Chef, for your knowledge, as you read statement for a moment, raise your right hand on my book, administers the oath for any of the issues.
Do you solemnly swear or affirm that the testimony you shall give shall be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
Yes.
Please state your name for the record.
Robert Champion.
Thank you.
Yes, sir.
Yes.
Thank you. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
Could you please introduce yourself and members of the jury?
My name is Robert Champion. I'm a police officer at the Asbury Park Police Department.
So you mentioned you're a police officer at the Asbury Park Police Department. How long have you worked there?
I was hired in December of 2017.
And what's your current assignment at the Asbury Park Police Department?
I'm a detective.
And what kind of responsibilities generally do you have as a detective?
Assisting victims with investigations, conducting statements, and doing follow-ups with any crimes.
And how long have you been a detective there?
About a year and a half about.
And prior to being a detective, what did you do
I was on loan with the Monmouth County Prosecutor's Office in the gang unit. I did that for about a year and a half. Before that, I was in patrol. I also was in the street crime unit when we still had it for a couple months. And then before that, I was in patrol.
And so where do you live?
I live in Neptune City.
There with anyone else?
I live with my wife, my 3-month-old baby, and my dog.
Now, I want to turn your attention, sir, to the defendant, Jennifer Coombs. Do you know the defendant? Have you met her before?
Yes.
And you see her sitting here in this courtroom?
Yes.
Would you be able to point her out and identify her by article of clothing?
She's right there. She's wearing a plaid white and blue shirt.
Your Honor, it's a record reflected witness identified the defendant. You will so invite. Thank you. Sir, I want to turn your attention specifically to Jennifer Coombs, the defendant. Did it come to a point where you came into contact with her around your home in Neptune City that you just described?
Yes, there's been numerous occasions.
I want to start at the beginning. The first instance of contact that you had with this defendant around your home, when did that first begin?
That started, I believe it was July 5th. I was getting home from working the midnight shift. I always parked my car right in front of my house, so I got out of my car. At that time, I was still wearing my uniform, in front of work. I got out of my car. Ms. Coombs also, she got out of her car and started insisting that I speak to her. I told her no. I was exhausted. I just want to go home, go inside, go to sleep. She was very persistent with me speaking with her, would not take no for an answer. So I called the Neptune City Police Department just to tell her to leave me alone. I don't want to talk to her. And that was it.
So I just want to break that down for a moment. You mentioned July 5th. What year was that?
That was 2019.
And when did you first move into that residence on Evergreen Avenue in Neptune City?
It was April 1st of 2019.
Now, you mentioned the defendant was getting out of her car. Was she staying in the area, to your knowledge?
Yeah, she was.
Where was she staying?
Across the street at 60 Evergreen. But I understood she was in aid for the wife of the woman over there.
So was that her home, to your knowledge, across the street, or was she staying there with the homeowners?
I honestly, I couldn't tell you. From what I understood, she was just an aide there, and she would just help out with whatever she needed help with.
Now, you mentioned the defendant approaching you on that day, attempting to speak with you. Did you have any previous familiarity with the defendant prior to that date?
Yes, I was familiar that she likes to film the police, which is fine, it's no problem. I don't care if she films me. If I'm at work, I have a body camera, there's always cameras rolling. As long as that doesn't interrupt an investigation, I really don't care about being filmed.
So you mentioned that you were aware she likes to film the police. Were you aware of her filming police officers in your department and you yourself personally on during various duties that you were performing while on the job?
Yeah, whenever we had a DWI checkpoint, she was always there. I've seen her while I was working. I never had any kind of interaction with her, whether it be positive or negative. Just never really knew her personally, just knew who she was. And That was really it. We never had any issues.
So you mentioned with regards to July 5th, 2019, with that in mind, that she was attempting to speak to you as you were coming home from work. Were you wearing your police uniform when you came home from work that day?
Yes, I was wearing everything I wore to work. I was wearing when I walked and stepped out of my car.
And did you commonly come home in your police uniform up to that date?
Up to that day, yeah, after I was confronted about being a police officer and she being very persistent about me speaking to her, not taking no for an answer, that's why I just stopped.
And you mentioned that she was attempting to speak to you about being a police officer. So from what you recall, was she making comments about the police specifically or your role as a police officer?
She was making comments about the police. I couldn't really understand what she was saying. When I told her, no, I don't want to talk to her. I just want to go inside, go to bed. It seemed that she was agitated. She wasn't happy with my answer. She wouldn't take no for an answer.
And you said that a couple of times she would take no for an answer. Can you describe exactly what you mean by that?
If I said, no, I don't want to speak to you, she would say, no, I'm telling you to speak with me. I want to speak with you.
Now, with regards to this conversation, the defendant speaking to you at that time, and her demeanor that you observed, can you tell us, was this did she appear to be greeting you in a friendly manner as a neighbor, or did this appear to be something else?
No, it didn't seem friendly at all. She was demanding that I speak with her. And it was just about me being a police officer. It wasn't like a welcome to the neighborhood or even introducing herself or anything. It was just demanding, saying, I want you to speak with me. No, I'm not taking over an answer.
So after the defendant insisted on speaking with you and wouldn't take no for an answer, what did you do in response?
I called the Neptune City Police Department. All I said is, can you just inform her that I just don't want to speak with her. I don't want to have any contact with her. If she stays across the street, it's fine. I just want to be left alone. That's all.
And to your knowledge, what did the Neptune City Police Department do in response to your call?
They spoke to her and they told her just to leave me alone.
So after that date, did you continue to wear your police uniform home from work?
No, I stopped
And why did you do
because she confronted me when I was coming home from work, and I just didn't want to have another incident again. I didn't want any issues. I just wanted to just go about my day. If I'm at work and she wants to talk to me, that's fine. I have a job to do. But when I'm home, it's my personal life, I just want to be left alone.
So after that July 5th date in 2019, did you have any further interactions with the defendant in your personal life, your personal capacity at home?
Yes, about a month later, I was at the beach with some friends. We came home and we're just hanging out on my porch. We're trying to figure out what we're going to do later on. Jen came outside. She started yelling things about the police, and again, I couldn't understand or make out exactly what she was saying. She got in her car with the son of someone that the parents actually lived there, and then she started speeding up and down the street, and then she would turn around, make a left, make another left, and then come flying up the street again.
And you mentioned she was yelling about the police again when she came out of home during that interaction. From your vantage point, did she appear to be directing those comments towards you?
She was looking at me. She's looking at me she was on her side of the street. It's not like she was directly in front of my house, but it's directly across the street. And she was saying things loud enough. She was looking at my house. She was looking at me, making these comments. There's no other police officers on my street or anything.
And with regards to those comments that she was making about the police, again, to the best of your recollection, those appear to be, what type of comments did those appear to be, the nature of those comments about the police?
They weren't positive. It wasn't saying like police are number one or police are the best or anything. It was hard to understand what she when she gets angry, it's hard to comprehend what she's actually saying.
But you did hear that it was about the police somewhere in there?
Yeah, it was. Yeah, she said she made sure it was very loud and clear that there was something about the police.
Now, you also mentioned her getting in her car and speeding up and down the street. Could you describe that a little bit more to the members of the jury?
When she got in the car, you could hear the engine accelerating, the engine actually getting much louder than you normally would. It's 25 miles an hour, and it's a very short street. And there was really no reason to do it other than to just try and get my attention, and that made all the other guests that I had over on the porch, they felt uncomfortable. I explained who she was, and I just had a recent problem with her, and they just said, all right, we're leaving, we're done for tonight.
Now, after you mentioned your friends were uncomfortable and they left because of the defendant's actions. What did you do in response to the defendant revving the car up and down the street?
I called the Neptune City Police Department, and I just asked again, just tell her to just please leave me alone. Stop bothering me, stop yelling things about the police. I have no problem with her videotaping or anything like that for videotaping police officers while they're at work. But while I'm home, I would just like to be left alone.
And to your knowledge, what was the response by Neptune City Police, do you recall?
They advised her, and then they suggested that if I stop calling, maybe she will stop, and she will leave me alone.
So after that date, in August of 2019, what were your interactions like with the defendant from that date moving forward?
It was very petty, and so she would start immediately after that time. Anytime that she wanted to turn around, she'd pull around and drive her car. She would pull into my driveway, and she would intentionally do that. And I thought about calling, but I thought it was a little petty and a little much, and I know she's just trying to get a reaction out of me. But I took Neptune City's, the police department took their advice. I didn't call the police. She continued to do that. I never called about it. There were times later on, like the spring and the summer, when it got warmer out, if I'm outside on the porch, I'm with my wife, I'm with friends or anything, she would be outside as well sometimes, stop what she's doing and just like stop and stare at us. And it made us feel uncomfortable, but at the same time, it was petty. I'm not going to call the police because somebody's looking at me.
And you mentioned that she would stare at you at occasions, make you feel uncomfortable. Why did that make you feel uncomfortable? Was she doing anything?
She would stare and she would smirk as if she wants me to have a reaction and to say something, or I don't really know what her goal was to accomplish out of that, but it did make me feel uncomfortable.
So you mentioned that this continued into the spring and the summer as it got warmer. So about how long did this conduct go on, this petty conduct, as you described?
That lasted about a little over a year. A little over a year, just stayed consistently like that. I never called about her pulling my driveway again. It was just little petty things. I thought just eventually, over time, she would just stop doing that, and I would be left alone.
So you mentioned that stayed like that, this petty level for a period of time. Did it come to a time where that behavior changed?
Yes. In September of 2020, I was walking my dog before I was going to go in for my shift. It was for a very short walk. I literally just come out of my house, go up to the first street, which is Steiner, make a left, which is, I think it's Poplar Place. I make a left and I go down there, which is, there's really nothing over there. There aren't any residential properties or anything. There's a big warehouse commercial building that has a couple apartments, and then there's a couple construction yards, but there's nobody ever really drives back there unless you're working over there.
So you mentioned that you took your dog for a walk in this industrial construction area. And at any point, you have any interaction with the defendant?
Yeah, so when I got to the opposite side, the street that runs parallel with Evergreen, there usually aren't any cars or anything driving down there. But when I was walking my dog, I heard a car coming up fairly slow. I turned around and I saw that it was Jen Coombs driving her car slowly behind me. I thought it was strange. I was a little worried at first. She pulled up to me. She lowered the window to her car. She gave me the middle finger and she said, "Fuck you," and then she sped off and then parked back in front of her house.
Now, you mentioned park back in front of her house.
When I say her house, I'm referencing 16 Evergreen.
But when you first left the house and took your dog for a walk, did you see where the defendant's car was at that point when you first left the house?
Yeah, it was parked where it always is. It's right in front of the house, right in front of 16 Evergreen.
And then after this interaction with you, when the defendant cursed at you, gave you the middle finger, she then returned to the address, is that right?
Yes.
Now, in terms of that interaction with her, as you just testified, following you on your walk with your dog, did that raise any concerns for you at that point about the nature of her interactions with you?
Yes, now that this is the third time she's following me while I'm walking my dog. She's stalking me, and it's escalating now that she's following me. And now using profanity, just trying to put the fear out. And I still don't, to this day, I have no idea what I did other than just say I just want to be left alone.
Now, what did you do in response to the defendant flipping you off, cursing you out, following you on your dog?
I called the Nixon City Police Department.
And to your knowledge, what did they do in response to this now third call on reported conduct by the defendant that concerned you?
They told her again to leave me alone and told me about signing complaints.
So after that date on September 5th, 2020, were there any further interactions with the defendant after that?
Yes, so this was during COVID, so I converted my garage kind of into a gym. And I was walking out of my house. So this was 3 days later after the dog walking incident. I was walking in my garage, and I noticed that she was outside on the front lawn with the son of the property owner. And she's pointing up at cameras. And I see there's a camera in a window. There were two other cameras. I know one by like the front door too. And the way that all these cameras were positioned, they were all pointing at my house. And as she was talking to this kid, I heard her say, "Now we can always watch him."
Now, these cameras that you observed on the home of the defendant staying in, did those cameras recently appear?
Yes, they appeared. The date that I reported, I guess that was the date that she put them up. I
And,
never noticed them before that.
and with regards to those cameras, did they appear, how did these cameras appear to be? Were they fixed in position? Were they adjustable? How did they be?
They were mounted. There were 2 or 3 of them were mounted. I don't know how the one was in the window, but you could easily adjust them from one looking in one direction to another.
And on the occasion that you came out and saw these cameras and the defendant's comments, where did those cameras appear to be pointed at that point?
Every single camera was pointed at my house. There were no cameras. There wasn't going down the street east. There wasn't going one west. There wasn't anywhere else other than all of them looking directly across the street at my house.
So after observing these cameras all pointed directly at your house and the defendant's comment, now we can always watch him, what did you do in response to this?
I called the Neptune City Police Department again.
And initially, how did they respond to that call?
They responded. They spoke to her. They told me about the procedures now to file a complaint again, and that's when I decided to go forward.
Now, with regards to the decision you mentioned to go forward with it, how did you proceed in terms of providing evidence to the Neptune City Police Department for this conduct that had been occurring during this period of time that you testified to.
I provided a statement.
And could you just explain to the members of the jury what that entails, providing a statement?
So a statement is when a victim goes in, meets with the detective. They ask what happened. I tell them everything I just told everyone here. And then they'll ask a couple of follow-up questions, and then that's it. And then it'll get submitted for review to see if there's going to be any charges filed.
Now, you mentioned that it was at this point that you made the decision to go forward with it and provide this statement. Why did you make that decision at that time?
At that time, now, I really am in fear. I have my wife that's home, my dog that's home. I don't know what she's planning to do next. She's following me when I'm walking my dog. I'm legitimately stressed out about it. I'm really concerned for my safety and then what could potentially happen now that she knows when I'm home and when I'm not home. She could do something to my house, my wife, my dog, anything.
You mentioned that you feel in fear for your safety at this point. But, let's be frank. You work as a police officer. You just testified that you work in a gang unit at points. What is it about this defendant that is making you in fear for your safety, despite the type of living that you make?
I've arrested a good amount of people. I've dealt with gang members. I was working with the gang. I see people that I've arrested out in public, at the grocery store, at restaurants. I see people I've arrested everywhere. There's a couple that I see at the gym every single morning when I go work out, before work. And I've never had an issue with them. The only exchange I've ever had with somebody that I've arrested or a gang member or anything like that is a head nod, like a greeting, and that's it. It's never gotten any worse. It's nothing more, nothing less.
What is it about what this defendant is doing specifically that's causing you to have fear that, despite those other interactions that you have in your mind?
I've never done anything to her other than just ask her just to leave me alone, just that I don't want to talk to her. I don't think that's the most ridiculous thing to ask somebody. If I was at work, I understand maybe it'd be a little bit different because I do have a job and do have a duty, but this is my personal life. This is when I'm at home with my family. And I have to worry about everything's getting progressively worse. We started out with her just trying to confront me to get me to talk to her, to get her to do doing little petty things to try and get me to react to it, and then now to following me while I'm walking my dog, saying fuck you, and then putting cameras up to watch me. It's very stressful, and it really makes me fear for my safety and my family, so what she's going to do if I'm not home to my family.
You mentioned that the fear that you have for your family as well. In terms of your family that you have at home, you mentioned your wife. Was she present during any of these altercations as well?
She heard her say, now we can always watch them. She heard her say about the cameras. I told her to call the police, and that she did.
So are you concerned that you mentioned for her safety as well, due to this behavior that's been taking place around your home?
Yeah, I'm concerned for my safety, her safety, my dogs, my house. I don't know what she's going to do next because everything's getting progressively worse. It started out as just her harassing me, but it's escalating now to being multiple incidents, and they're progressively getting worse. And to the point now she's still.
You mentioned you haven't had any issues with any people that you deal with in your line of work. Have you had any issues like this with any other neighbors on the block since moving in there?
I haven't had an issue with a single neighbor. I've met some of them to this day. I've never talked to her or anything, but I don't have any issues with anybody. I've never had an issue with a neighbor, period. From growing up to when I moved out, when I lived in multiple places. In Asbury, Neptune, anywhere, I've never had a problem with any kind of neighbor.
Thank you, sir. Nothing further at this time, Your Honor. Thank you very much.
Mr. Mitchell, on cross-examination.
Yeah.
I'd like to talk to you about July 5th, 2019.
coming home from work?
Yes.
Jen's already outside, or she's in her car at that time?
She's in her car, and then she exited her car to speak.
I believe you used the word confronted, right?
Yes.
So you're walking up to your house, and she's following you?
I barely made it out the door. And no, she didn't follow me.
Out the door to your vehicle?
Yes.
I'm just trying to paint a picture here. So if you're getting out of your car,
Correct.
Jen sees you, she gets out of her car,
Correct.
and she approaches you.
She didn't walk up to me, but she started engaging in conversation.
We said confronted, right?
Yeah, she confronted me, and then she said she wants to speak with me and demanded to speak with me.
You told her you did not want to speak to her, right?
Correct.
Proceeded to walk to your house.
No, because she kept asking to speak with me while I got the rest of my stuff.
She entered your car.
I'm opening the door to take out my backpack and things for work, yeah.
So this occurred at approximately 8 a.m.
Yes.
She wouldn't take no for an answer. What do you mean by that?
She kept asking me after I sat down.
Asking to speak with you,
Yes.
but you don't remember exactly what the subject matter was.
She said, "Oh, you're a police officer, I want to talk to you." I said, "No, not right now, I'm exhausted." And she kept saying, "No, I want to talk to you," but in more like aggressive, like demanding tone.
When did she leave?
After the police spoke with her, honestly, I don't remember. I went inside the house and I called the police.
Immediately?
What do you mean immediately?
You called the police immediately?
Yeah, after I got my house, yes.
And that's what you told the policeman called, right? That Jen Coombs approached you and attempted to make conversation.
Yes. After I told her no several times, and then she wouldn't take no for an answer. Yes.
About how long did this interaction last for?
Less than a minute. About a minute. I don't remember. I didn't have a. I don't know how long it was. It was rather quick though.
How many times did you tell her no, you don't want to talk to her?
At least 5 times.
You're saying this is less than a minute, and you told her no, didn't want to talk to her about 5 times.
Yes, because it was very repetitive and going back and forth.
So not that good at math, but it's approximately 1 no every 10 seconds.
I don't know.
You're sure that she approached you on that day, right?
Yes.
Turning your attention to August 19th, 2019. You just testified here that Jen never crossed the street.
Yes.
She remained on the side of the street that 16 Evergreen, her residence, is on.
She never like walked across the street like in front of my house yelling. She didn't do that.
Right, she was on the opposite side of the street.
Correct.
You weren't able to make out exactly what she was saying?
Something about the police. I'm the only police officer that lives on my street.
She was with another individual all that day?
I believe so.
About how many times would you say she circled the block?
It was once. She drove up very quick, came back around, and then flew back up again.
You called the police again that day, correct?
Yes.
Told them that Jen Coombs was across the street, yelling and being disorderly.
I don't remember if I used that exact word, disorderly. I felt I was being harassed again because I'm a police officer across the street, and I didn't want to talk to her.
Right, but she didn't try to talk to you that day.
She's yelling things about the police and other people I was with knew about the first situation, and now it's happening again. And I said, well, that's who it is. And they felt uncomfortable, and at that point, it becomes harassment. It's making me feel uncomfortable, makes my guests feel uncomfortable to the point that they're leaving and they don't want to be in my house anymore.
Jen was gone by the time the police came, right?
I believe so.
She wasn't hanging around making a scene. She had left there.
Well, yeah, after she circled the block, speeding up and down the street, yeah, she left.
He said it was one time.
She pulled out of her spot, sped up to the stop sign, went around, and then flew up the street again.
Interesting.
Yeah.
So then we're talking about September 5th, 2020. Remember that date?
Yes.
You walk out of your house, right? taking your dog for a walk?
Yes,
You see Jen's car.
correct.
It's in front of 16 Evergreen where she always parks it.
Yes,
Then, while you're walking your dog, you see that same car over here. A car following, right?
I heard a car, I turned around, and it was her car.
This is the same car that you saw moments earlier parked in front of the house.
Yes,
And you know Jen's car, right?
one of them. That one that day, I remember it.
Did Jen ever say anything to you threatening you?
I took, when she gave me the finger and said, fuck you, I took it as threatening. Because the behavior's escalating. She's going out of her way to follow him while walking my dog. To say, fuck you, and give me the finger. So that, to me, is threatening.
Other than that instance that you consider threatening, did Jen ever make any other threats to you?
Just the harassment. The 2 times she was harassing me.
So let's talk about the cameras on September 8th, 2020. Now, all these cameras are pointed at your house.
Yes.
Then you saw that from across the street.
Yes.
You ever see the camera feed?
No.
So just by looking at the cameras, you determined that they were all pointed directly at your house. You could not capture anything.
I mean, they could if you moved them.
Right. What I'm saying is, based on your observations from across the street, you determined that these cameras were not observing anything.
At that time when I called the police, every camera was pointed at my house. They weren't pointed any other direction. They weren't east, west. It was all going south directly at my house. I did notice when she's setting them up, it was rather easy for her to adjust where you live.
You saw her setting them up.
Yes,
When was that?
the same day. When she was pointing them out, I did see her. She did touch or manipulated something to the camera.
So you testified earlier that you were working out in your home gym on that day, right?
I was walking out from the front of my house, and I was going on the walkway. I go up my driveway to the garage.
what time during the day did you see Jennifer setting up the cameras?
I don't recall the exact time.
She was on the roof.
No.
How was she setting them up?
It was her and it was the homeowner, Keith.
Well, you just said you saw Jennifer setting the cameras up and how easily maneuverable they were. I'm just asking you, how was she setting them up?
Keith set them up for her. The homeowner set them up for her.
So he was maneuvering them?
Yes.
So that's how you saw how maneuverable they were. Because Keith, the homeowner, was doing
When he was setting them up, yeah, he would have them mounted and he could move the camera.
that. So he's on a ladder?
I want to say it was some kind of a ladder, maybe it was a step ladder that was on the front. I saw him do the one on the front porch.
So the one on front, you saw him install that?
Yeah.
And how high is that off the porch?
I don't know.
See him install the one that's up on the side of the house by the roof?
I didn't see him install it.
I'm confused here because you testified that you saw how easily maneuverable cameras were because you saw her installing them.
Yeah, and then Keith was installing for her. And then she also manipulated the cameras. She was able to move the camera.
Genuinely.
Keith moved the cameras. I did see her move one specifically that was in her bed, or I believe it was her bedroom. I found out later on, but Keith helped move that one around. Or she moved that one around. Keith moved the ones that were outside her.
So approximately how long did you have to watch them for to get all this information?
How long did I watch it for?
Yeah.
I saw them outside during the day, but I didn't know that he was putting up the cameras. I saw that she was fiddling with something up in the window, but I didn't realize there were cameras.
So you testified earlier that you didn't call the police because Jen turned around and hit you.
Correct.
You didn't call the police and Jen looked at you when you're on your porch.
She would look at me like smirking, like in a way I could tell she wanted some kind of reaction, but I'm not going to call the police and say, hey, my lady's across the street looking. That's a bit much. She did repeatedly turn around in my driveway, but at the time I thought if I just stop calling, maybe she'll just stop and she'll stop with the little petty things and just overall just let me live in peace.
You testified today that all of these incidents, July 5th, 2019, August 19th, 2019, September 5th, 2020, September 8th, 2020, put you in fear for your life in the life of her family from genitals.
Yes, and I felt a lot of emotional distress over. I had to constantly think about what she's going to do next because it's progressively getting worse.
So when these incidents occurred, you called 911.
I don't remember if I called 911 or if I called the MTC Police Department directly. I don't remember which one.
Would it surprise you if you called the non-emergency line?
No, but it also gets me directly to their desk rather than calling 911 and having me get transferred.
Go ahead, Dr. Williams.
Still someone in redirect?
Yes.
Mr. Schiffuli, and I wanted to address some of the topics that were brought up on cross-examination. Starting backwards with the cameras. Defense counsel mentioned a number of times about where the cameras were pointed, view of the cameras. Did you hear any remarks made by the defendant that indicated where the cameras were pointed?
Yes.
What did she say?
She said, now you can always watch it.
Now, with regards to who was setting up the cameras, and that was extensively talked about on cross-examination, were you, what were you doing at that time? Were you sitting and staring across the street that afternoon and seeing what they were doing, or were you doing something else?
I don't remember exactly what I was doing. I wasn't sitting there watching to see what her next move is. I did notice that Keith was outside. He was doing something on a ladder, but I didn't pay much mind to it until afterwards. But together.
So what was it that really drew your attention to the situation with the cameras? The issue that was causing you?
I don't have an issue with having cameras if you want them looking in all directions, but when we have every single camera looking at my house and then you're making a comment that now you can always watch them, that's very alarming. And that's when I truly feel in fear for my safety, my family's, and it's just, like I said, repeatedly, I'm sorry, but it's escalating. It keeps getting worse, and it doesn't seem like there's ever going to be an end in sight.
What was it specifically about having surveillance cameras constantly watching your family in the home that specifically put you in fear that this defendant might cause you and your family harm?
Because she's going to know when I'm home, when I'm not home. If my wife's home alone, none of us are home. It's very alarming to know that she knows every time that I'm around.
And how long did this incident with the cameras occur? How long was that after the incident where the defendant followed you while walking the dog and said, "Fuck you"?
So within a couple of days, I believe it was 3 days, correct me if I'm wrong.
Thank you. Nothing further.
Thank you very much.
Thank you for your time.
Mr. Mazzone.
Thank you, Your Honor. The state calls Captain Keith Mitchell.
Very well. Give us that calculation.
I'll retrieve the witness, Your Honor.
So if I can say to you, remain standing for a moment, raise your right hand and put the field, or you may affirmatively choose.
Do you solemnly swear or affirm that the testimony you shall give the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
Yes.
Please state your name for the record.
Keith Mitchell.
Thank you.
Yes, sir. Mr. Rizzo.
Thank you, Your Honor. Good afternoon.
Yes, sir.
Could you please introduce yourself to the members of the jury?
Keith Mitchell, retired captain from Neptune City Police Department.
And how long did you work at the Neptune City Police Department?
25 years.
And were you working there back in 2019?
I was.
When did you retire, please?
May 5th of this year.
So turning your attention back to August of 2019, did there come a point where you responded to Evergreen Avenue in Neptune City for a call involving a robbery shampoo?
Yes, it did.
And do you recall your response to that call and that date?
I do.
So with regards to that call, specifically, best of your recollection, what were you responding to that day? What was the initial call?
I was a report of a disorderly person. The neighbor was making a complaint that one of the other neighbors was yelling at him from across the street.
And who was the accused person that would be disorderly yelling at Mr. Shankly?
The accused at the time was Jennifer Coombs.
And in response to this call, what did you do?
When I arrived, I spoke with Mr. Shankly. He provided me his side of the story. Said it was an ongoing matter. It continues all the time, where the neighbor apparently yells at him from across the street. He has friends over. We completed. I explained to him that she's not here. She had already left apparently. I explained to him the procedures for speaking to the court, signing complaints, because we didn't witness anything happen at the time.
And with regards to Ms. Coombs herself, you mentioned she wasn't there during the initial response. Did you ultimately get to speak to her at any point?
I did. As I was clearing the call, she had pulled up. I asked her to pull over. I spoke with her at her car. Asked her, explained to her what the complaint was. She denied that complaint. I asked her if she perhaps did have a conversation that was loud. She said that she was telling her friend that police were number one. And I basically explained to her after we were done speaking about it that she should just refrain from having a conversation with Mr. Champollion. And that was the end of our conversation.
So with regards to defendant on this date in August of 2019, were you able to advise her with regards to future contact with Mr. Champollion, whether or not that contact should continue or was wanted by Mr. Champollion based on the report that was made?
If I explained to her that he wanted to be left alone and then to refrain from having any contact with him.
And thank you. Nothing further to witness at this time.
Mr. Mitchell. Any cross-examination?
Thank you, Judge. Good afternoon.
Thank you, sir.
Jen wasn't there when you arrived on scene.
No, she was not.
She wasn't there until you're getting ready to leave.
Correct.
And how long you were there for?
5 or 10 minutes.
Part of the advice that you gave to Robert Champollion was to record Jen if anything like this happened in the future.
Correct.
Did you give the same advice to Jen?
I did not.
You told him to report something because that could corroborate what he was telling.
That was the intent, yeah.
And I guess that goes for anyone, correct?
Correct.
If they report something and then make an allegation, there's more credibility to that allegation.
Correct.
I don't have any more questions.
Are you great?
No, Your Honor.
Thank you very much, sir. State any further.
Yes, Your Honor. The state called Detective Sergeant Coombs and I'll retrieve the witness, Your Honor.
Thank you.
All right. There.
So I'll just ask you to remain standing for a moment, raise your right hand as my court clerk will administer your briefing affirmations.
Do you solemnly swear or affirm that the testimony you shall give shall be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
Yes.
Please state your name for the record.
Thomas Olmsted.
Thank you.
Thank you guys. Mr. Rizzo.
Thank you, Your Honor. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
Please introduce yourself to the members of the jury.
I am Detective Sergeant Thomas Olmsted from Neptune City Police.
And how long have you been at the Neptune City Police Department?
I've been there 15 years, and a detective for 4.5 years.
And that you mentioned you're a detective sergeant currently. What are your responsibilities as a detective or detective sergeant?
Overseeing the Detective Bureau, which is one of the detective investigations, witness statements, victim statements, interviewing suspects, crime scene processing, all that kind of stuff.
So I want to turn your attention specifically to a investigation regarding the defendant, Jennifer Coombs, and the victim, Robert Chamberlain. Were you at an investigation out of your department regarding those individuals?
Yes,
And when did you first become involved in that investigation?
I believe it was in September of 2020 when I took a victim statement from Mr. Chamberlain.
And you mentioned you took a victim statement from Mr. Chamberlain. Could you describe to the members of the jury what's involved in taking a victim statement?
It comes into my office and me and another officer detective is present. We sit him down, we ask him a couple of questions about his background, and then we just have them describe to us in detail the incident or incidents that occurred to them.
And with regards to Mr. Chamberlain, was he ultimately able to come into your department and give that victim statement to you?
Yes, he was.
And was he able to describe in detail the allegations he was making with regards to the defendant, Ms. Coombs?
Yes.
Now, specifically with regards to that statement, do you recall mention the issue regarding surveillance cameras raised by the victim in that statement?
Yes.
Now, ultimately, after completing that statement with the victim, were you able to view these surveillance cameras yourself?
Yes.
So if you can tell the members of the jury, how did you come to view those cameras yourself?
They were in the exterior of the house that the defendant was residing in, and they were viewable from the street, so I was able to see them externally on the house.
And with regards to viewing those cameras, what observations did you make with regards to the cameras on the exterior of the house that the defendant was set?
Specifically, there was 2 cameras on the western side of the house, where their angle or their lack of angle really was not consistent with viewing the property of that house, or pointed towards Mr. Chamberlain's residence.
So you mentioned not pointed at the property of the house itself.
Correct.
To clarify, where did those cameras appear to be pointed? As you observed them on the exterior of the home the defendant was setting in?
Pointed towards Mr. Chamberlain's residence. They were on the 2nd story. They weren't angled downwards towards the front yard or the parking area in front of the house or driveway or side yard, anything like that. They appeared to be pointed straight across.
Thank you, Detective. I have nothing further to witness at this time.
Switch to the cross-examination.
Thanks, sir.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
So you were the detective that was in charge of this investigation.
Yes.
And there were 4 main events that went into the complaint of stop, correct?
I believe so.
There was the initial contact on July 5th, 2019.
That's possible, yes. I don't have any of those reports with me. I don't have those incidents committed to memory, so.
Sure. So if I showed you the reports, would that refresh your recollection of the incidents in question?
Absolutely.
Can I approach it?
You may.
Detective, I'll show you what's been marked as S11 for identification. You'll tell me what that is.
This is a CAD report from July 5th, 2019.
You tell me what the entirety of the 5 pages there contains.
It's the report between Robert Champuyan and Jennifer Coombs.
And that is for July 5th, 2019, correct?
This one is yes.
There was a call made by Robert Champuyan requesting a police officer.
Your Honor, objection, hearsay may be heard.
You may. We'll approach the stop bar.
So as part of your investigation, you reviewed each of the individual reports, correct?
Yes.
Reports that were taken by officers other than
Correct.
officers that responded to these calls, and then wrote down what they observed and who they talked to, things of that nature.
Yes.
One of those reports was from July 5th, 2019, and I did provide that to you to refresh your recollection. Does reading that report refresh your recollection about the July 5th incident?
I remember reading it 3 years ago.
So your testimony here states you don't remember anything about.
Well, I mean, I wasn't there, so I remember the incident. No, I remember reading the report probably the next day after it was completed, and then while investigating these charges, yeah, I remember reading it that time, not the incident itself, as I wasn't present for it.
So let's talk specifics then. Robert Champuyan made a call for service on 7/5/2019, right?
Yes.
Made a complaint about Jennifer Coombs.
Yes.
And in that complaint, to the dispatch, it requested an officer come out to the house.
Yes.
In that complaint, in that call, he's saying that she was sitting in a vehicle with her arms crossed attempting to make conversation.
Objection, Your Honor, hearsay may be heard. You may.
What you said?
So as part of your investigation into this, you reviewed this police report, correct?
Yes.
The one that I just showed you before.
Yeah.
7/5/2019.
Yes.
And you read the whole thing, right?
Yes.
There's a part of this police report called the can call info comments. You know what that is?
I believe that's what the dispatcher reports.
So this is when someone calls in to dispatch,
Yes.
they get connected with dispatch.
Yes.
And these are the contemporaneous notes or report that dispatch makes while they're on the phone with that person.
Yes.
So as part of your investigation, as you said, you reviewed these dispatch notes.
I could have, yes. I can't remember specifically if I read those or the report itself, but I could have, yes.
So in these dispatch notes, it memorializes the call from the complainant, Robert Chamberlain, correct?
Yes.
And as part of that call, the dispatcher took notes and said she was sitting in her vehicle with arms crossed, attempting to make conversation.
Okay. Yes.
Correct.
Yeah. Yes.
How did that, if at all, inform or direct your investigation?
It's not the one report, it's the continued reports and incidents compounding upon each other.
So you got this case in September of 2020.
I guess that's when I met with Mr. Chamberlain.
That was the 22nd of September 2020.
I believe so.
You wrote the report, right?
Yes.
And you would have written on the date that you met with Chamberlain.
It's possible.
I'm going to show you this report and see if it refreshes your recollection as to the date that you met with Robert Chamberlain. Can you please tell me what this is?
So this is my investigation report for this.
That's an accurate representation of your investigative report.
Yes.
And what date does it say that you met with Robert?
I met with him on September 22nd,
So that's approximately
2020, yes.
you took a statement on that date.
Yes.
What other investigatory steps did you take?
I reviewed the past reports. And then I noticed the cameras outside the house, which confirmed his version of events. The things that he was reporting in his statement, they all matched up to the previously reported incidents.
Did you take any pictures of the cameras that were outside?
No, I did not.
Did you get a statement from any of the individuals that lived at 16?
I spoke to the homeowner who lived there, Mr. DeWolf, that day when we arrested Ms. Coombs, but a formal statement, no.
Did you get a statement from Jennifer?
No.
As part of your review of the previous events, did you review any of the body-worn camera footage?
No.
Did you know that there was body-worn camera footage?
Depends on when the call occurred, but yes, there would have been at one time body worn camera footage, yes.
So there's a certain amount of time you have to keep the body on camera for the right?
Yes.
And it's even longer if it's related to a criminal investigation.
Yes.
How does that work? Do you have to go back and preserve it?
Yeah, I mean, when we have something, we would take it, the officer would take it and log it into evidence in our place.
So how about in a case like this, when you're an investigating officer and the body cam footage has not been tagged?
I mean, I could go back and tag it if I remember to or wanted to.
But you didn't do that in this case,
No, I did not.
so that's gone, right?
Yes, all the body camera footage for this case is gone. If it's not tagged or saved into evidence, it'll automatically purge itself out of the system. And if that, I mean, thinking back, could have been done, yes. But the amount of body worn camera footage you'd be preserving would be too voluminous, it'd be logistically a nightmare.
Well, how hard is it to preserve the body with camera footage?
Well, if you're talking about for this goal or two, it wouldn't be hard at all. I can't see into the future and know which body worn camera footage I'm going to need 6 months, a year, 2 years down the line that, we should preserve this in perpetuity.
Right, but you can see into the past, right?
Yes,
So when you were investigating this case on the 22nd of September, there were events that you could have gone back and preserved the camera footage.
yes,
And that goes the same thing for the calls for service from Robert. Carefully.
uh,
The calls for dispatch,
oh, the calls to dispatch, yes, I could have preserved that too.
those were not preserved either, right?
No,
And now those are gone as well.
yes.
So you went to 16 Evergreen on the 23rd to arrest Ms. Coombs on the shot, right?
Yes,
That's when you saw the cameras on the house.
I don't recall when I saw the cameras on the house.
But when you were there on that day, did you ask to see the camera feed?
No, I did speak to the homeowner, Mrs. Wolf, who was there. He said the cameras aren't his. He doesn't have access to them. All he did was help hang them up. He didn't have access to the screen, the feed, nothing.
Did you actually have the camera feed?
No. She was being about by first aid transport to the hospital.
Judge, I have no questions.
Redirect this to.
Yes, Judge. Just to start with the question defense counsel asked with regards to the body camera footage and dispatch calls. So, to the best of your knowledge, as a matter of general policy, how long have those types of recordings recorded, preserved in the normal course?
I don't know about the dispatch calls. That's a separate office that I don't know about. But our body-worn cameras are saved for 180 days, I believe, unless there's action taken on.
Now, with regard to those calls, that body-worn camera footage, why isn't it just preserved forever? Why does it get deleted at some point?
The volume of storage space
I don't even know how you would store that many thousands of hours of video and audio.
Now, you mentioned that, that footage, though, in criminal cases, it can be tagged as evidence and preserved. Is that right?
That is correct.
The initial calls for service that were made by Mr. Champourian during the course of 2019 and 2020, from your review of the reports, were those initially treated as criminal investigations by the department or as calls for service being made by a resident?
Now, those are just typical calls for service. They would not be saved in the normal course of business.
Now, with regards to that, the footage from your investigation in terms of you going out and arresting those counsel and pics, to your knowledge, was that tagged as evidence in part of a criminal investigation?
Yes, yes, it was.
Thank you. I'm nothing further for witness at this time.
Recross, Mr. Mitchell. No. Thank you very much. Council brief. Mr. Mitchell, is there anything further?
No, Your Honor, the state press states the chief.
Okay, thank you. So, ladies and gentlemen, I'm looking at the time on the clock in the back of the courtroom. It's almost 4 o'clock. And I did tell you that our court days customarily end around 4 o'clock. We're close to that right now. And so I'm going to excuse you for the day. There's some things that I can handle with the attorneys that have to take place outside of your presence. We'll handle it this afternoon. And then we'll have you back tomorrow morning for us to resume. I will ask you to report to the jury assembly room tomorrow morning between 8:30 and 8:45. And we should, on handling everything we have to handle this section, we're ready to go right around 9 o'clock. So that's why I give that time. I'm going to give you the instruction that I give everybody, but I'm also going to tell you that, as I mentioned last week, a little card with a phone number that you can be reached at during the day. If you need to give that phone number to anyone that may need to reach you in an emergency, you can pass that number along, because as we know, you can't have your cell phone on in the courtroom. You can give them that number, they will call with a message directly to you immediately to make sure that you can be contacted in the event there's a need for emergency. So we'll have someone handing you those cards as you do walk out. And once again, as I mentioned, I will give you that instruction that you are not to talk with anyone, not amongst yourself or anybody else, about anything you have heard in this case, either mentioned, evidence, testimony, whatsoever. Nor are you to do any research at all regarding any of those things. It's important because we want to make sure that your decision is based solely on the evidence as presented in this courtroom and the instructions on the law as I will give you before you begin your deliberations. Moreover, we want to make sure that you don't form any opinions or reach any conclusions on this case until after you've heard the closing argument of counsel and the instructions on the law as I give you. The research, or I should say, contact communications that includes phone, in-person, text messages, anything on social media or the like. And what may seem innocent, there is a comment on someone's response, no matter how innocent it has the potential to impact your thinking or your view of things. And we want to make sure that does not happen, so that your decision is based solely on the evidence on the law that I will instruct you on. Last, as I mentioned yesterday, if you do see earlier today, if you see anyone involved in this case outside of this courtroom, they don't acknowledge you or walk by or don't recognize you, they're not attempting to or disrespectful. It's just to follow my instructions, just as I instruct you not to have any contact with anyone involved in this case either. So with those instructions, just report down to the jury assembly room, and then you can head out for the day. We'll see you tomorrow. You check. Jury room. So everything from the council for us to hear at this moment. Mr. Zell? No. Mr. You would like some time, I'll certainly give you a little time.
Yeah, just a minute to speak my point regarding for election to testify. The state has arrested, however, I just let me talk to my client person at any moment, and defense's part will be made after the break.
Okay, so we'll take a short break, let's say, so, well, I'm not going to give it a deadline, I want to make sure you have sufficient time to have a discussion with Ms. Coombs.
Sure.
So if you could just advise one of my court clerk, whenever it is that you're ready, and she'll let me know when we proceed. Okay, thank you very much. We'll go off the. Okay, we're back on the record. Ms. Coombs already here. Mr. Mitchell, have you had sufficient time to speak with Ms. Coombs?
I have first and foremost the defense working to the state beat us that now that the state has arrested, there has not been sufficient evidence presented that would allow for a verdict beyond reasonable doubt guilty to be found against Ms. Coombs. We've heard the testimony from all the state's witnesses, and that is our position at this time, Judge, with its scale on that.
I thank Your Honor for the access that the defense motion be denied viewing the evidence in light most favorable to the non-moving party, the state, a reasonable jury could conclude that the state did establish here a prima facie case of guilt. In our case in chief, we have specifically a single count of stalking. We heard testimony from the victim, Robert Chamberlain. He testified about a course of conduct committed by the defendant over the period between July 2019 and September 2020. He testified with regards to repeated incidents involving the defendant and Mr. Chamberlain, not just one or even two incidents of the statute. When it talks about defining repeated incidents as two or more to the minimum necessary to meet the statute, you have at least 4 incidents that are described by Mr. Chamberlain, increasing in severity. First, he testified to being approached by the defendant as he was coming home from his police uniform, that he did not want to speak with her, that he told her repeatedly. He estimated 5 times in under a minute. They didn't want to speak to her, he wanted to go home, he was coming off shift, he was tired, and that she wouldn't take no for an answer. He said that repeatedly, to the point that he needed to go into the home and call the police in order to advise her that he did not want to continue to have contact with her. He indicated that advisement was made, and that nevertheless, this course of conduct continued directed at him. The next month, that the defendant came out of the home, began to shout at him, began about the police looking at him and at his home while he sat on a porch with his friends. That was so alarming and confrontational that his friends actually had to remove themselves and left his home because they were uncomfortable. That the defendant drove up and down the block at high rate of speed, and that based on all of that, again, he called the police again. She was advised, as we heard from Captain Mitchell, to leave the victim alone, to not to continue to bother him in this matter. What we heard from the victim, that this course of conduct continued over the course of the next year. The defendant would be involved in heavy acts targeting the victim, whether going out of her way to pull into his driveway to turn around, even though she had now been advised twice by law enforcement to refrain from having contact with him. She testified she continued to do that over the course of the following months. And then, as well as staring at him, making faces, smirking, all incidents that he didn't report to the police because he was didn't believe that rose to the level necessary needed to be reported, but again, this conduct continued towards him until finally it escalated to the point where he did become concerned for his safety when I'm talking about walking his dog in an industrial area with no commerce going on and no one would need to go in, and that the defendant saw her car at the home prior to him walking, that he then observed her following him slowly behind on his walk, and then pulling up to him, flipping him the bird, saying, quote, "fuck you," and then driving, walking, returning to the home. And then just 3 days later, having the altercation involving the cameras, where he comes out, sees these security cameras now pointed at his home directly, and he was the defendant making a comment, now we can always watch him. And based on all that, the reasonable jury, taking all of that testimony in the light most favorable to the state, accepting that testimony from the victim and from the officers who testified in corroboration, including Detective Sergeant Homestead, who also testified clearly that those cameras were not pointed at the property of security, but pointed at the victim's home. Reasonable jury, taking that testimony in the light most favorable to the state, and all the inferences of the state, could conclude that indeed the defendant was engaged in a purposeful and knowing course of conduct over that period of time that was directed at the victim, despite repeated warnings to leave him alone, to stop engaging in this behavior. And certainly a reasonable jury could conclude that a reasonable person in the victim's shoes would feel in fear for himself or his family or suffer other emotional distress based on this ongoing conduct, escalated in severity, being under surveillance constantly in his own home, not being able to take the dog for a walk without being stopped, screamed at, fuck you, and flip the bird. At that point, yeah, a reasonable jury could conclude that they would feel fear for their safety, fear to just go leave and take their dog on a walk, feel fear to leave the home with their wife behind while the defendant is able to surveil the property and know when he's not home. So based on all that, Your Honor, the statement submitted that we have established a prima facie case based on the testimony, we would accept the defendant's motion be denied. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Dr. Zhang.
Under Rule 3:18-1, the defendant is entitled to a judgment of acquittal at the close of the state's case, quote, if the evidence is insufficient to warrant a conviction. The test is whether, based on the entirety of the evidence and after giving the state the benefit of all favorable inferences, or benefits of all favorable testimony and the favorable inferences drawn from that testimony, a reasonable jury can find guilt beyond a reasonable doubt. That's your State v. Williams, direct quote 218 NJ 576 at page 594, a 2014 case which cites State v. Reyes, a 1967 New Jersey Supreme Court case at 50 NJ 554, specifically 558 to 59 of the Reyes case. That would be establishing each element of the crime charge. The evidence may be direct or circumstantial, that's from Reyes at 459, and inferences need not be established beyond a reasonable doubt. State v. Tim, 417 AJ Super at 549. Under this rule, 3:18-1, the court is not concerned with the worth, nature, or extent of the evidence beyond its scintilla, but only with its existence viewed most favorably to the state. That's from State v. Nunes, 150 NJ Super 436. At page 440 of the television case from 1977. And if the evidence satisfies that standard, the motion must be denied. The sole count in the indictment here is stalking. In order to find the defendant guilty, the state must prove each element beyond a reasonable doubt, that being the defendant purposely or knowingly engaged in a course of conduct directed at a specific person, and the defendant's course of conduct will cause a reasonable person to fear for his or her safety, fear for the safety of the third person, or suffer emotional distress. The court does find, when viewing the evidence in its entirety, in that way, as much must be considered under this motion, the benefits of all favorable testimony to the state and all favorable inferences from that testimony provided and afforded to the state. The court does find that a jury could reasonably find the defendant guilty beyond a reasonable doubt. Specifically, as far as the testimony, we learned the testimony from the alleged victim, that being Mr. Champollion. He testified about 4 specific events over a course of time, that from July of 2019 through September of 2020. All incidents involved the defendant, and as he described it, involved a progression of conduct that was targeted towards him. He noted the first events in July of 2019, where he testified the defendant confronted him when he was getting home from work. He testified the defendant insisted on wanting to talk with him even after he said he did not want to talk with her. He mentioned that was 5 times within a minute. He is a police officer who was in uniform coming home from work, and he testified the defendant was making comments about the police, but she did not listen to him. And he described another event around a month or so later, in August of 2019, he was sitting on the porch with some friends. Then it drove by as he testified, yelling things about the police and what he thought were not positive comments, which would indicate negative comments, and then sped around the block and passed again. Then there were the 2 incidents he testified about in September of 2020. The first, when he was walking his dog, he mentioned the route that he took, and that he was in an area that individuals would customarily drive unless they were going back there for work or towards this industrial or construction area. And that during that time, as walking his dog, he heard a car coming up slow and turned and saw it was the defendant, whom he testified over the window vehicle, gave him the finger, and said "F you," and then went out and parked in front of her house where she lives. 3 days later was the final fourth incident testified about, where he saw the defendant and another person saw on video cameras on the home across the street, that being where the defendant was residing with the property owner, and the cameras were being installed by the property owner as well as the defendant being there. It was also strike that. And that he heard the defendant say something along the lines of, "Well, now we can always watch you." And see, as he observed the cameras, they were directed and pointed towards his house, and then the investigating officer also indicated that the cameras appeared to be directed at or pointed at the house of Mr. Champollion, not on the property, with the house where they were mounted. That could establish the defendant purposely or knowingly engaged in course of conduct directed at a specific person, that being Mr. Champollion, and that the course of conduct over a year plus period of time with the incidents specifically targeted at him, and hence each incident as described by the victim, the alleged victim, would involve purposeful conduct by the defendant, and that also could be a reasonable person feared for his safety or the safety of a third person, defendant being a neighbor across the street, and considering the continued conduct over more than a year as testified, and considering as could be, or as his testimony indicated, going from verbal interaction to following the video surveillance of his property could lead to the conclusion beyond a reasonable doubt that a person, reasonable person, in fear for safety or the safety of defendant. Defendant may have points as to each of the alleged incidents, as pointed out through cross-examination. However, those would go to whether the state has carried its burden, and questions about the credibility or the weight of the testimony or what actually may have taken place, whether it's an exaggeration, whether there was a basis to undermine the investigation in general. There were questions suggesting that the investigating officer taking the victim's version, another police officer alone, or whatever other basis the defendant may argue that the state hasn't carried its burden. However, this motion requires the court to consider the evidence in a light most favorable to the state, and giving the state all reasonable inferences from that evidence, which he believed could lead a reasonable jury to find that the state has carried the burden to establish guilt beyond a reasonable doubt. The reason will deny the motion here. And at this point, Mr. Mitchell, have you had a conversation with Ms. Coombs whether or not she would seek to testify, and so has a decision?
Yeah, she is going to testify.
Okay. And just be with her, let her know that there's questions I have to ask and go over with her regarding that decision.
Yeah, I told her that she is probably with the court that she would have to enter into in order to testify tomorrow.
Thank you very much. So, Ms. Coombs, I'm now going to ask you some questions, okay? And I'm going to ask you these questions regarding your decision whether or not to testify. Before I ask you any questions and have you placed under oath, or you may affirm this. Before that, if you would please raise your right hand. Do you swear or affirm the testimony you shall provide shall be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I affirm.
If you would please state your full name and spell your last.
Jennifer Lynn Coombs, C-O-O, M as in Mary, B as in boy, S as in Sally.
Thank you so much. You can have a seat now, Ms. Coombs. So there are some questions that I do have to ask you regarding your election to testify or not. I want to ask you to keep all of your answers verbal because they do have to be recorded and made part of the record. Do you understand that?
Yes, sir.
If, a few instructions first, if you don't understand the question that I asked, let me know, and I'll rephrase it as much as necessary to ensure you understand exactly what I'm asking. Do you understand that?
Yes, sir.
If you don't hear any questions that I ask you, let me know that as well. And I'll repeat it to make sure that you hear every question that I ask. Do you understand?
Yes, sir.
It's important that you tell me if you don't hear a question or you don't understand a question, because if you don't tell me otherwise and you answer a question, I'm going to assume that you heard it you understood it and that you are answering it truthfully. Do you understand that?
Yes, sir.
Are you suffering from any physical or mental condition that might affect your ability to understand what is happening?
No.
Are you suffering from any physical or mental condition that might affect your ability to make a knowing, voluntary decision?
No.
Are you under the influence of any alcohol, drug, or prescription medication that might affect your ability to make a knowing, voluntary decision?
No.
Are you under the influence of any alcohol, drug, or prescription medication that might affect your ability to understand what is happening here?
No.
Now, how old are you?
51.
And how far did you go to school?
First year community college.
And are you able to read, write, and understand the English language?
Yes.
Now, I want to once again go over with you, or re-advise you, you've been advised this some time ago, but that you do have the right to remain silent. Do you understand that you have that right to remain silent?
Yes.
And you can give up that right to remain silent and testify at this trial if you wish, and that's your right to testify or not on your own behalf at this trial. Do you understand that?
Yes.
Now, if you choose to exercise your right to remain silent and not testify, the jury cannot hold that against you. Do you understand that?
Yes.
And if you decided not to testify, the court could give a charge or instruction to the jury, making them aware of it. Do you understand?
Yes.
All right. And the charge would say this. I'll read it to you. As you know, defendant elected not to testify at trial. It is her constitutional right to remain silent. You must not consider for any purpose or in any manner in arriving at your verdict the fact that the defendant did not testify. This fact or that fact should not enter into your deliberations or discussions in any manner at any time. Ms. Coombs is entitled to have the jury consider all the evidence presented at trial. She is presumed innocent whether or not she chooses to testify. And do you understand that if you testify and you chose that instruction that will be given to the jury? You understand that?
Yes.
Now, you can give up your right to testify at your trial. You understand that?
Yes.
Now, if you do testify, you also understand that you will be subject to cross-examination by the prosecutor, and you would have to answer all of his questions. Do you understand that?
Yes.
You understand that if you don't answer a question, or you refuse to answer a question that he would ask, after you've been instructed to do so, you could be subjected to fines or contempt court charges. Do you understand that?
Yes.
Now, there are no issues as far as prior convictions. Just to confirm, counsel, that there would be nothing in that regard to, as far as any cross-examination, correct?
Sorry.
Oh, sorry, just to confirm, my understanding, I believe it's accurate, just want to confirm, there would be no issues as far as any prior convictions.
Correct, Your Honor. In the same prior criminal history, it's no prior medical convictions for impeachment material.
Okay, thank you. So, Ms. Coombs, have you discussed your desire to testify with your attorney, Mr. Mitchell?
Absolutely yes.
Do you have any questions for him at this point in time regarding your decision to testify or not?
No.
Have you had sufficient time to talk with him about this decision?
Yes.
And if you had any questions, were your questions answered to your satisfaction?
Yes.
Do you have any questions for me that you want to ask me about regarding your decision?
No.
And have you made a decision on whether or not you wish to testify at this trial?
Absolutely yes.
And what is that decision?
My decision is to testify on my behalf.
So it's your decision, you elected that you want to testify on your behalf, is that correct?
Absolutely yes.
Now, have you made this decision on your own, obviously in consultation with your attorney, but it's your own, is this your own decision?
Absolutely yes.
Has anyone pressured, forced, or coerced you in any way to get you to make this decision?
Absolutely no.
Have you anyone put any pressure on you to get you to make this decision?
Absolutely no.
Has anyone made any undisclosed threats or promises to get you to make this decision to testify?
Absolutely no.
And are you making this decision freely and voluntarily?
Absolutely yes.
Are you satisfied with the advice or consultation representation Mr. Mitchell has provided you in relation to this decision?
Absolutely yes.
And based on my questions and the answers provided here by Ms. Coombs, I am satisfied that she has made a knowing and voluntary decision and elected to testify here in this trial. She's not under the influence of the alcohol, drug, or prescription medication that would impair her ability to make a knowing and voluntary decision, nor that would impair her ability to understand the circumstances that are being presented here. She is not suffering from a physical or mental condition that would affect or impair her ability to make that knowing and voluntary decision, or not understand the circumstances here. And I do find that she is making this decision after a full consultation with competent counsel and having all questions that she may have had answered to her satisfaction. Okay. So counsel, as far as tomorrow, at that point, we'll begin with the defense case. I'd ask that we'll be ready to go at 9 o'clock. So the jurors should be here in enough time for us to begin at 9. See where the testimony goes. We'll have any charge conference, obviously, before preparing to make charge. For closing arguments, I should say, and then we'll go to closing, charge, and deliberation. Is there anything else from either counsel before we move on?
No, thank you.
Mr. Mitchell, anything further?
Not this time, Judge.
Thank you very much. We'll see everyone tomorrow. Schools, you'll play at the end of every day. Mention that I know you'll be here, but I do have to let you know that if you choose not to be